Now we get to the key question in outsourcing. When does outsourcing make our firm more efficient? We'll answer this question by applying two theories from economics. The first theory is Ronald Coase's theory of transactions costs. The basic idea here is that contracts are expensive to write, negotiate, and monitor. Those costs eat into the surplus created by the worker's labor, and that will be split by the firm and the worker. So outsourcing is going to make more sense when those costs of contracting, those transaction costs, are low. The cost of contracting is determined in large part by three aspects of the output our workers are delivering to us. The first is measurability. Do I know if they delivered what they were supposed to deliver? The second is standardizability. Do I have to write a separate contract for every worker? Do I have to write a separate contract for every particular type of output I want a worker to deliver? If I do, then contracting costs are going to be overwhelming. So if I can't standardize the nature of the contract because the nature of the output that I'm trying to get, that deliverable, is not standard, then we're not going to be able to outsource. Finally, we have granularity. Granularity describes how independently a particular activity can be performed. How much do I need to interact with other people in order to do my job? You know, it's useful to think about something like Wikipedia. If you want to contribute a little bit to Wikipedia, well, all you need to do is be an expert in that one topic that you are going to write on. That's a very granular task. It would be much harder to create a textbook in the form of Wikipedia, because how could someone write chapter 3 if they don't know what was in chapter 2 and they have to coordinate with the person who's going to write chapter 4? Since they all need to be integrated, none of those tasks are granular, and that makes it much harder for them to be outsourced. Transactions costs aren't the only considerations in determining whether outsourcing will improve efficiency. We also need to think about the investment that we would require of an independent contractor. Now, traditional at-will employment is a low investment proposition for the worker. The firm is making all the investments. They get the office building and equipment and tools. They will even invest usually in the workers' human capital. They will give them training, information systems, all of these things. But an independent contractor has to invest in these assets on their own. Okay? So if it's more costly for the independent contractor to make these investments than for the employer to do so, then outsourcing is going to eat into the surplus created by labor, and there will be less to go around. It's going to be a less efficient arrangement. When we think about investment, we have to consider two dimensions: intensity and specificity. The intensity of investment really just describes how many dollars of investment needs to go into every dollar of labor. Okay, so not many production companies, an auto manufacturer is not going to be outsourcing to some worker something that needs to be done on an assembly line, because think how much that worker would need to invest to create their part of the assembly line. It just doesn't make sense. However, if you're talking about something like a call center, you know what? Someone can work at home. All they need is a computer connected to the internet and a good headset. Similarly, with a lot of programming and other consulting work, there's very little dollar value, very little intensity of investment required of the independent contractor. The second dimension is specificity. If the independent contractor is going to invest in some assets to work for one client, can they use those same assets to work for many others? If I've just been outsourced and I have to buy special tools to work with the company that now I'm an independent contractor for, and I can't use that for any other company, now my investment is very specific. I need to be charging my former employer to recover all of those costs. On the other hand, if my investment is that I am learning a new programming language, or I have a set of standard plumbing tools that I can use to work in any type of house or building, now that's not very specific, and I won't have to charge each individual firm a whole lot for those assets. You might be thinking right now, I wonder if my job could be outsourced. And if so, would I want it to be? And these are great topics for discussion. I just want to close with a couple of points to help you navigate those tricky questions. First, it rarely makes sense to outsource executive functions. And by executive functions, I mean tasks that involve allocating costly resources, such as attention or investment, among separate granular tasks. Executive functions are decidedly not granular because they are pulling together many different elements of a business. They're not easily measurable, and they're not easily standardized. They often require a lot of firm-specific investment as well, especially in expertise. And, also in more traditional assets, you need to be on site, so it makes sense for the firm to invest in offices and information systems that all of the executives can share. Second, it's very important to distinguish clearly between how outsourcing affects the total surplus created by labor and how it affects you, either as someone running the organization or as the person being outsourced. A careful analysis of transaction costs and investment requirements will tell us whether outsourcing increases or decreases the total surplus created by the labor activities in question. But it doesn't tell us how that surplus will be split. When outsourcing increases total surplus, it's of course possible that the firm and the worker are both better off. But a large firm often has a big negotiating advantage, so they capture most of that surplus. It might even end up that the worker's worse off because they capture less surplus after being outsourced than they were when they were an employee, even though outsourcing increases total surplus. Obviously, this makes outsourcing a profitable decision for the firm, but not such good news for the worker. Outsourcing will always be a controversial and an emotional topic, since so many people are so deeply affected. Reasonable people can say that firms should outsource whenever it improves their profits, and reasonable people can raise concerns about the ethical and the societal implications of that attitude. My goal here is very modest. I simply want you to understand exactly what outsourcing is and identify the conditions under which outsourcing reduces or increases the total surplus created by labor. Those, I recognize, are merely the first steps towards making wise decisions.